One of the mysteries for me in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is why Firefists never saw a significant uptick in play when Spirit was removed from the ban list. With Spirit at 3, Firefist is one of the most consistent decks in the game, and has a number of monster elimination options providing effect flexibility including raw attack power. So let's figure out why Firefists do not see the play they should for a deck with their level of tools. Starting with the direct Firefist support, neither Swallow nor Coyote is worth any space in my deck. Swallow's innate special summoning ability is inherently bad because there are better things to do with spent fire formations than sending 3 of them to summon Swallow. Its summons effect is not bad, but not useful enough to warrant a tribute. Finally, its no targeting effect is actually rather useful, but unfortunately the meta has shifted away from targeting effects. Thus its effectiveness has diminished significantly. Coyote has a nice Cyber Dragon similar special summoning effect. The problem is that's all it does. With Firefist not being a big tribute deck, and Coyote being a level 5, which heavily limits its ability to be a productive XZ piece, one of the only real advantages to Coyote is if one runs Kirin, but Kirin is not really worth the effort. Snake would actually be an interesting card if the first effect allowed the acquisition of a fire formation spell or trap, not just trap card, for its second effect triggers its first effect. Unfortunately, limiting the first effect to a trap card only heavily limits its usefulness, as well as the requirement that it needs to be the only monster on your field to actually activate its draw effect. The big problem with Snake is it really is designed as a form of comeback card, but its comeback potential is not quality. Dragon is definitely a solid card. The ability to easily search the deck simply for activating any fire formation spell card facilitates easy +1s, as well as a nice recursion ability to produce more playmaking either in the form of XZ or synchro plays. While I certainly cannot complain about Dragon, I think it competes with another card for deck space, and that card simply wins out in my opinion. If Firefist had a quality level 7 synchro that could use Spirit as the tuner, then Dragon would be much more useful in my opinion. Rhino is just a horrible version of Honest or Kalut for Firefists. The costs associated with its effects are too great. It has to be on the field, and you have to send 2 cards, 1 fire formation card on the field, and 1 Firefist from the hand to the graveyard to basically destroy 1 attacking monster. There are much more consistent and continuous cards that can be run to deal with attack point issues. Buffalo is a card that competes with Dragon for me, and Buffalo wins out due to the sheer versatility and consistency of its revival effect. Buffalo's ability to use Fire Formation and Fire Fist monsters from both the field and hand creates huge levels of versatility in getting it back onto the field to make rank 4 XZ plays, or even just add an extra attacking monster. However, due to its revival effect and the searching capacity of Fire Fist, I like running only 1 copy because of its once per turn restriction. There is not much to be said about Bear other than you better run 3. It has the potential to produce consistent +2s, and it's a meaningful hitter. Granted, its destruction effect has been significantly hurt due to all of the anti-targeting and floaters in the meta right now, but it still does a quality job of helping Firefists increase their winning probability. In contrast to Bear, Gorilla is a solid card, but it just seems to have lost its role on the deck with the emergence of Twin Twister, as well as Fire Formation Goyoku still existing. It could have been interesting if Gorilla grabbed Fire Formation spells from the graveyard instead of the deck, allowing it to recycle its back row destruction effect, but it was not to be. I don't run any Gorilla. Caribou's effect is almost better suited for being a Fire King monster rather than being a Fire Fist monster, because there are no good natural combo pieces for its effect outside of one particular card, and that card has a number of better monster targets in a Fire Fist deck. Overall, the end phase nature of the effect is rather slow, and the synchro material effect is heavily marred by one major flaw of Fire Fist decks: no good archetype specific synchro monsters above level 6 outside of Kirin, which is of poor quality. While it can work in combination with Onslaught, overall the card is not really worth it. The major problem haunting Boar is bad statistics, which hurts its ability to maintain field presence without back row assistance. Thus, its deck spots are better spent on other monsters. Its inability to special summon another copy of itself is also a needlessly negative condition heaped upon it, limiting its helpfulness. For Fire Fist opponents, Rooster is one of the most annoying cards in the arsenal, almost always netting a +1, and commonly netting a +2 in the Spirit loop. Special summon Rooster either via Spirit or Horse Prince and get a free search, and then send a spent Fire Formation card, most of the time a Tenki, to the graveyard for another Fire Formation card, most of the time another Tenki, to net another search. One of the reasons Rooster is useful is because it can grab either a spell or trap-based Fire Formation card, allowing for increased versatility for the given situation. However, due to deck space considerations, I only run 2 copies because you typically do not want to draw Rooster when you don't have a Spirit in your hand. 3 copies of Spirit is basically mandatory. While Spirit does have some annoying restrictions, it is an automatic level 6 synchro when normal summoned, and commonly starts a generic loop that nets a +4 and can easily be replaced over multiple turns. However, Spirit does highlight the critical flaw in a Firefist deck: no level 7 synchro target. If Konami wants to take Firefist to the next level, a quality level 7 synchro target is the next step. Raven definitely has its uses, for it has a decent body at 1800, and positive search effect for Fire Formation spells in the deck. However, its Fire Formation protection effect is somewhat mediocre because outside of Tensu, none of the Fire Formation cards are really worth protecting when face up. Overall, I feel they're just better cards for the deck. For example, Hawk is a better version of Raven in that it has a very similar Fire Formation search effect, but its secondary effect is much better by enhancing attack and defense of Firefist monsters by 500 when a face-up Fire Formation card is on the field, which will be almost all the time. Due to the searching capacity of this deck, though, I only feel the need to run 1 copy. Wolf is a lot like Raven. It has its uses, but its overall effect is just too mediocre for my taste, and there are better cards. Leopard is essential to the consistency of the deck, both enhancing searching capacity and fueling the Spirit combination. 99% of the time, Leopard will perform one of 2 tasks: 1, tributing itself to search for a Tenki or Tensu, 2, being summoned from the graveyard by Spirit and used as synchro material for a level 6. Kieran is so incredibly mediocre, boy, that seems to be the word of the day for some of these Firefist monsters, that summoning it is really not worth the material or the effort. Skip it. Horse Prince is definitely worth some extra deck spots, as it is a critical advantage producing element. Summon it off a Spirit, typically get Rooster, get your search, start your plus chain. Also, Prince is one of the biggest hitters Firefist can put on the field. While 2200 does not seem impressive, Firefists have numerous means of putting attack augment cards on the field to support it. While typically you will not need 3 copies, I still tend to run 3 because extra deck space is really not that tight in a Firefist deck. While Horse Prince is the primary early target for synchro summoning, Tiger King is the primary early target for XZ summoning, to grab that free +1. Also, its targetless non-Beast Warrior monster field effect negation is definitely valuable in a number of situations. Finally, its summons from the deck effect can be useful for maintaining field presence against destruction-based decks like Cosmo to help set up other XZ plays, Utopia Lightning, cough cough, for the next turn. 2 copies. Cardinal used to be Firefist's trump card before anti-targeting became such a fad in Yu-Gi-Oh! However, while it has diminished in power somewhat, it is still a very effective card as a poor man's tiramisu. This card does a nice job of recycling Fire Formation cards and removing viable opponent threats at the same time. The only real drawback is that it takes 2 Firefist monsters, which makes it a little more difficult to summon from time to time because you can't use Wolfbark as one of those pieces. I run 1 due to this drop in efficiency. Lion Emperor is a nice recycling card with solid attack power. However, I don't tend to use it as much as I use level 6 synchro monsters in this deck, and Cardinal's recycling ability hurts its overall usefulness, but I still run 1 copy for emergency situations. For the Fire Formation cards, in my opinion, at least 2 copies of Tensu are important to maximize combination potential by providing that additional normal summons. There are a number of situations where Firefists struggle without Tensu on the field. 2 copies for me, only because of deck space, as multiple Tensus in the hand can get a bit cloggy. Twin Twister has limited the overall usefulness of Goyoku. While Goyoku is searchable, I just don't have the deck space to run any copies, although running 1 to 2 in a side deck for games 2 and or 3 against back row heavy opponents is advisable. Yoko is just flat out bad. 3 copies of Tenki is basically mandatory for obvious reasons. Saito is actually an interesting card due to all of the searching potential for Firefist decks, but 7 Fire Formations is a bridge too far a vast majority of the time. Also, the secondary fire formation set from the deck is basically worthless because almost no fire formation should still be in the deck because running like 9, 10 plus typically produces huge inefficiencies for this deck. Kayako is basically a trap version of Yoko in the sense that it's completely worthless in my eyes. Tensen is raw attack power for Firefist, and because it's searchable, I believe in the current meta this card is important at least 2 copies due to the importance of overall attack power and dealing with a variety of monsters, especially Monarchs and Cosmos. I run 2 again due to dex-based considerations. Nothing bad to say about Tenken, as it has a nice protection effect and is searchable, but again, I feel there are better options available for success with this deck. The Indirect major Firefist support, while some might disagree, for me, Coach Captain Bearman is actually a nice tech card, largely for the purposes of XZing into Coach King Giant Trainer to draw 3 cards and do 800 to 2400 effect damage. Getting Bearman and 2 other level 4 Beast Warriors on the field is not difficult due to Wolfbark's revival effect, as well as Tensu's double normal summoning effect, Onslaught's effect, Buffalo's effect, and Soul Charge. The loss of the battle phase can hurt, but drawing 3 cards is still rather powerful and can help set up explosive plays. Also, Bearman works very nicely with Onslaught by itself, allowing Firefist to get a very significant attacker on the field to deal with certain threats. At least 2 copies of Wolfbark are needed, for it is a walking rank 4xz, especially for making Tiger King or Utopia the Lightning. I run 2 copies due to deck space, but I can see those running 3. Finally, I run 1 copy of Vulcan the Divine. Divine is an interesting card because while Horse Prince typically generates more advantage, Divine is no slouch in the advantage department and is able to eliminate annoying floaters, most notably seen in Burning Abyss deck. However, the anti-targeting elements in the other meta decks does hurt its usefulness at multiple copies in the main deck. That takes care of the monsters. For the remaining spells, I like running 2 copies of Onslaught of the Fire King, which is an excellent card for any deck that runs Fire Beasts, Beast Warriors, or Winged Beasts, including Firefists. Use it to summon Buffalo from the deck for a rank 4 play and eventually getting it into the graveyard. A level 3, either Spirit or a Material for Synchro purposes, or if you need simple raw attack power, bring out Bearman. I only run 2 copies because it gets a bit cloggy at 3. I also run 1 copy of Raigeki, 1 Soul Charge, 1 Day of Peace, for obvious reasons. 1 day is run because rebuilding is easy with Firefist, so avoiding OTKs is top priority. Due to all of the searching, free advantage, recursion, running 3 Twin Twisters is definitely viable for Firefist and should be expected. Finally, due to the attack power required for Firefist against the current meta because of the lack of anti-targeting or mass removal, I run 3 copies of Solidarity, as realistically outside of the occasional Castel or Utopia, the entire main deck and extra deck is run off Beast Warriors. That extra 800, 1600, or even 2400 combined with an additional 100 to 500 from other fire formation cards in the back row can really go a long way and is essential to winning against the popular meta, at least in my opinion. Finally, closing out the traps, I run 1 Bottomless Trap Hole, 1 Solemn Warning, and 1 Vanity's Emptiness, along with 3 copies of Drowning Mirror Force, because as I said before, Firefists can rebuild rather easily due to all of the advantage and pluses they can get, but they need to avoid getting OTK'd. For the extra deck, I run the following cards in addition to Firefists. 1, obvious, the Coach King Giant Trainer. 1 number 39 Utopia Beyond. 1 number 39 S39 Utopia the Lightning. 1 number 39 Utopia. 1 Castel, 1 Gaga Cowboy for the close, and I run either Phantom Knight Breaksword if you can afford one, or 1 number 47 Nightmare Shark so you can attack for game directly, even if your opponents have things on the field. In the end, it can be fairly argued that Firefists have lost a step due to the changes in how other monsters can now shrug off targeting. However, thanks to cards like Solidarity and Drowning Mirror Force, Firefists can still take advantage of their fantastic consistency and quasi-swarming ability to compete against meta decks. Well, that is my Firefist deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.